Hello, I'm Lucy from Colouring in the Midst of Madness, and today I'm bringing you a mammoth comparison of the UK and US edition of World of Flowers. Now this publishes worldwide next week. It's the 7th book by Johanna Basford, and she has ever so kindly sent me a copy of each edition so that I can do this comparison post for you all, so that you can pick which edition is best for you. Now there are an awful lot of very subtle differences between the two copies. Most of these won't affect enjoyment of the book, but subscribers to my channel and readers of my blog will know that I like to do these comparison posts to tell you about every single difference I can find. Now there are a few differences that definitely will impact your enjoyment of the book, so look out for those as I'm going through. There are 37 differences in total, but please don't be put off, I will go quickly, I promise. And the ones to look out for are numbers 1, 12, 15, 17, 26, 28 and 37, because those are the ones that might impact your choice on which book to get. So without further ado, I shall start. Now if my voice gets a bit distant, it's because I'm looking sideways at my laptop, because I can't possibly memorise all of this. So that's why there might be some pauses and things. So, number 1, and this will impact things, is the book size. Now I have lined these up completely at the top, and as you can see, the US edition, which is on the right, and I will keep it on the right throughout I hope, is 1/2 centimetre taller and wider than the UK edition. So I'm just going to pop this on top and line it up at the bottom and the side, and you can see that some of the US book is sticking out around the edges because it's a little bit bigger. Now this does impact the size of the images on some of the pages, as well as other things which I will talk about later in this post. So this matches all of the UK editions, and this matches all of the US editions. They've all been like this, apart from Secret Garden and Enchanted Forest, which were published by Lawrence King. But ever since publishers changed, these have been the sizes for the books. So if you're wanting a set that matches on the shelf, you need to go for the same edition as you've previously gone for. So number 2 is the cover design. Now the cover design is ever so slightly zoomed in on the UK edition compared to the US. So the US has got a little bit of extra detail that the UK hasn't. So if we look at this side, you can see that this second flower is showing, and it's not on the UK edition, and that goes the whole way down the side. It's also shown here at the bottom. So again, doesn't impact enjoyment, but it's just something I noticed. So on the US edition we have the Penguin publishing logo. The US edition is published by Penguin, and the UK edition is published by Virgin Books, and their symbol is not on the front cover of this, so it's just this little penguin up here in this tulip. The cover colours are also slightly different. Now I have to change the settings on my camera, so I don't know if this is going to show up, but I'm hoping that you can see that they are ever so slightly different colours. The US edition is ever so slightly kind of creamier than the UK edition. Both are ever so slightly off-white, but this one is slightly whiter than the US edition. We've also got the foiling colour. Now I'm hoping you can see in the light that, one, they're super shiny, but the US foil is a more sort of pinky rose gold, and the UK edition is a more kind of coppery rose gold. Both of them are a new foiling colour. Neither of these have been on any previous editions. They've all been different golds. But yeah, they are different from each other. We've also got number 6. Sorry, I keep forgetting to read out the numbers. So number 6 is the foiling aspects. And these are different on both books, and especially the titles. So the whole of the US title is foiled, but it isn't on the UK edition. It's much more subtle, the foiling on the UK edition. So we've then got the colour splashes. and by that I mean this beautiful pale pink colour. So the whole of the title section on the US edition is pale pink, and on the UK edition there are little aspects on the flowers that are sort of painted this really pale pink, which I'm hoping is showing up. And there aren't any of those on here, it's just the background. So you can really tell the covers apart when you're looking online, and those are really useful distinguishing features. So number 8 is the title size. So as you can see, it's printed quite a lot larger on the US edition compared to the UK edition. The of is floral on this one, but not on this one. I don't know why that has been decided, but obviously that has a huge impact on sort of how large the title is showing up. So number 9 is the spelling. So the easiest way of telling which edition is which is by the spelling of colouring, because the US version doesn't have a U in it and the UK does. So that's a really useful way of knowing which edition you're buying when you're looking at listings online. And also do check the publisher, because as I said, those are different. So number 10 is this butterfly placement, and this little butterfly is next to World on the UK edition and next to Of on the US edition. I have gone that detailed, I'm afraid. Number 11 is the blurb. So it is much longer on the US edition than the UK edition. So we've got information about Joanna as well as about the book itself, whereas on the UK edition we just have the information about the book. Also, the barcode is over the design on the UK edition, but within this box on the US. So number 12. Now this is another one that will possibly affect your enjoyment of the book. So the UK edition, as with almost all previous UK editions, has this black spine with white text, and the US edition has a white spine with black text. As you can see also, the text is written in a different order, and there's also an orchid design a third of the way down on the US book, and a blossom design a third of the way up on the UK. And we've got the different publishing logos. Now, the reason this might affect your enjoyment of the book is because I know that some of us are real perfectionists and we like to have matching sets. So here I've got Magical Jungle, and that is the US edition, and this is the UK edition. So as you can see, they do look really nice with their respective countries' copy, because they do all match. So if you're bothered about them looking good on the shelf together, then do get the same edition as you've previously got, so that they all match. The exception is Ivy and the Inky Butterfly, because both of those spines were white, so you don't have a choice about that, I'm afraid. So the next thing is thickness. Now, oh, hang on. At the top we have got the UK edition, and at the bottom we've got the US, and I'm hoping that you can see that the UK edition is a bit thinner than the US edition, and this is because of the paper that's used, as well as probably the cover, which I'll go into more detail about later. They also weigh different amounts, so the UK edition weighs 518 grams, and the US edition weighs 542, which I believe is a 24 gram difference, but it's quite late at night and I might be wrong, so do forgive my maths if that's not correct. I've just put these down. The next thing is that the binding is different, and this is the case every time. So the UK edition, I'm hoping you can see, is stitch and glue bound, and the US edition is only glue bound. Now, plenty of people have no issues with this, in which case just pick whichever edition you want based on the other stuff I'm telling you about later. Some people have had issues with pages falling out of books that are just glue bound. I know lots of people have been having issues with Ivy and the Inky Butterfly because it's got so many pages. So if you're particularly sort of rough with your books or you've had any issues before, then I would really recommend getting the UK edition because the binding is super strong, and I haven't heard of anybody's pages falling out of those. Of course, if you're wanting to remove the pages from your book for colouring or framing or whatever, then that's going to be much, much easier from the US edition, where it's just glue bound. So it could actually be of benefit to you to get this one if that's what you're wanting to do. So number 16 is the cover attachment to the front and back pages. Now what I mean by this is this here. Now on the US edition, which is what I'm holding, it is attached much further into the pages than on the UK edition, which means that when it's opened out flat, it doesn't open as flat, especially not to start with, as the UK edition does. You can see that this is joined a fair bit further back on those pages, so it does open quite nice and flat sort of from the get-go, which is much easier for colouring. Right, number 17, another thing that will affect which book you get is the dust jacket. So the US edition doesn't have a dust jacket, it just has these lovely card covers. The UK copy, we've gone back to the lovely dust jacket, which I know some people really don't like, but I absolutely love them. I like being able to take it off. So we've got this lovely pale pink card cover, and then the dust jacket opens out, and it is fully removable, so you can take it off when you're colouring so that it doesn't get damaged. Now I'm hoping that you can see it is pretty shiny and quite waxy. It's got a really odd surface, and so it's quite difficult to colour. But you can colour it with alcohol markers, and I'm fairly sure that they don't bleed, but do check. So I know a lot of people really like colouring the whole thing, so that's definitely something you can do, but do bear in mind that pencils generally don't stick, whereas on this it is just normal smooth card, so you can colour it. So number 18 is the French flaps. Now for those of you that don't know, that's this. I have no idea why they're called French flaps, but they are. So the same design is on both books, but it is orientated slightly differently, so I'm hoping that you can see that there's a fair bit more shown of this image on the UK copy than there is on the US. It's printed a little bit larger on the US edition, and so obviously it takes up a bit more space, so a bit more is cut off than on here. The inside cover design, sorry, it's like musical books doing all of this, also is orientated a bit differently. So again, you can see that the US copy is cut off much earlier here than it is on the UK edition. Again, it's just sort of moved a bit. I don't think it's actually even printed larger on the US copy. It certainly doesn't look it. It's just printed differently. So the next thing, just put this back together, is the title page. Just tuck that under there. So the title page is actually printed much larger in the US edition than in the UK edition. I'm hoping if I line this up a bit better that you can see it's actually printed almost a centimetre bigger in both directions in this one compared to this one. We've also got the butterfly, which has been moved, and the OVs are printed differently again. So that's number 20 and 21. Number 22, we're going to have musical books again, is the copyright page. So the information is different because they're printed by different people, and as you can see there is way more information on the UK edition compared to the US edition. Also, number 23 is the copyright page design, and as you can see they're really quite different. So there is way more design on the US edition than on the UK edition. I have no idea why this was chosen, though obviously there's far less space here so it wouldn't actually fit. But there's also these lovely butterflies added to the UK edition. Also, it actually states on these pages where the books are printed. So the UK editions are printed in China and the US editions are printed in the USA. So that's number 24. Number 25, we are on to the introduction and tips for colouring. And on both of these double page spreads, the text is justified differently. So you can see that this line doesn't have, well, this line starts on both, whereas this one finishes at the top on the word both. So again, absolutely doesn't affect enjoyment. It's just something I noticed and I like to add these things in. So number 26, this is one of the biggest differences between the books, and I have a feeling it's not showing up on the camera, which is really frustrating. But yeah, this number 26 is the paper. So the US books have the named paper that was created for and with and by Johanna. And it is named after her. It's this really lovely thick off-white sort of ivory paper. It's got a lovely tooth. It's beautiful to colour on, and I absolutely love it. The UK copy also has gorgeous paper, which is sort of off-white and has a bit less of a tooth, and it's a little bit thinner, but it isn't thin, it's just a bit thinner than the US paper. It is slightly whiter, so it does show colours a little bit better. These are the same as their respective countries' editions of Magical Jungle, Joanna's Christmas, and Ivy and the Inky Butterfly. So if you have any copies of those, these are the same as that country's editions. So yeah, part of the reason the US copy is thicker is because the US paper is slightly thicker. However, I will show you at the end on the colouring test page, water-based pens don't shadow or bleed. They are more likely to shadow on the UK paper, but both papers are really, really lovely. So you really don't need to worry about that. Obviously don't use alcohol markers because they will bleed straight through. The ink does transfer on both, more so I've noticed on the US edition. So as it says in the tips for colouring from Joanna, do put some paper behind your work. But if lines transfer, you can erase them anyway, so it's not a big deal. So number 27. Right, this actually isn't a difference in these books, but it is a difference from previous books. So the UK edition of Magical Jungle had some issues with pixelation, and it wasn't that noticeable, but it was something I did notice at the time and I did mention in my review. There are absolutely no issues. I have scoured these books and there are no issues in either of them, so the print quality is really, really good for both. So the next thing is the image size, and I will show you this. So because the US edition is slightly larger, some, but not all, of the images are printed larger, and this is up to about 1 centimetre. So if you've got any visual issues, then I would suggest getting the US edition. So I'm hoping that you can see that this is printed a little bit larger than this. I'm not going to get the ruler out. If you're wanting to see that, I have taken heaps of photos and they are in the written version of this comparison, and that's in the description box, so do check it out if you're wanting to see more detail of any of this, like the paper difference in colour or the cover difference or the size differences, because I have been out with my ruler and my camera, and yeah, you can see those. So there are a number of pages where this is the case. I'm trying to remember what they all are. I know this perfume bottle is one of them. There we go. So I'm sure you can see that this is larger than this one. So yeah, it does affect some of the images, but not all of them, and it seems to be quite a random selection. I have no idea sort of how that's decided, but yeah, if you have any issues with fine motor control or vision, then I would suggest getting the US copy. So the next thing is the image orientation, and I've got to find one of the pages that this affects. Right, so again, the page is printed the same in both books, but you get slightly more and slightly less when you compare them to each other. So let's just line these up. So when we're looking at this edge, you can see that there is more printed here of these flowers on the US edition than there is on the UK edition. Again, really doesn't affect enjoyment, it's just something that I spotted. So, number 30, we're skipping right to the back to the colour palette test page. And if you're wanting to see flick-throughs, they are linked in the description, and you can find them on my channel as well as the reviews. Because yeah, there isn't time to go through all of the pages at the minute on here as well. So the title, it's really odd. As you can see, it's printed right at the top on the US copy and sort of somewhere down the middle on the UK copy. So I just noticed that and thought I'd add that in. Number 31 is the page ink permanency. So as you can see, I have scribbled over this to see if the ink will move. And the first one I've used is a Derwent blender pencil, the second is a Derwent burnisher, and the third is a Caran d'Ache blender. Now I find the first two of those pencils quite difficult to use, and actually I only really use them for this test now. And I'm hoping that you can see that less ink has moved on the UK edition than the US edition, but that neither of them is really that bad. And those pencils are kind of grubby, so some of the mark they've left is just how they look, which is why I don't use them anymore. So yeah, unless you're particularly fond of loads and loads and loads of blending with a blender pencil and you've had issues previously, I wouldn't worry about that. So the next thing is the poster page size. That's number 32. We're nearly there. And that is here. So the measurements are bigger on the US edition, of course, than the UK edition. So this page measures 23.5 by 25.3 on the US edition, and it's 22.9 by 25 on the UK edition. And because of that, number 33 is the poster image size. So this image on the reverse, which opens out, is printed larger in the US edition. So I'll just shimmy this over so that you can hopefully see that it's actually quite a bit larger. So I've lined that up at the top, this line, and you can see that it's this whole section is larger. That's how much it's larger by. So it's over 1 centimetre, I think. So that's quite a big difference in terms of your colouring. The image on the inside, I'm hoping I can show you this, is also orientated differently. Let's just pop this edition on top. So you can see that at the top, the UK edition shows slightly more of the image because the top of this flower isn't cut off, whereas it is here. But then you've got this odd little bit where some bits aren't printed up quite up to the edge. I have no idea why that is. And it's sort of like that in bits around the edge where you've got slightly more or slightly less on each image. So that's number 34. Number 35, oh, I've dropped something on my book here. I'll get this out later. Is the Perforations, which actually show up better in the back. Now, they're really, really fine and close together on the UK edition, and on the US edition they're much more prominent and a bit bigger, and you can see that that looks like it's probably a lot easier to remove. Now, both seem to be holding pretty well, so they shouldn't end up falling out unless you actually want to take them out. And do be careful, because I have noticed in previous books that the perforations aren't necessarily brilliant, and obviously you don't want to go pulling at it and then it ripping, so do be careful with that. Number 36 is again a difference about these books compared to the previous ones. So there is no treasure hunt at all. So as you've seen, there's no key in this book, and there's no section at the front of what to find. There isn't anything hidden in these pages, but there are heaps and heaps and heaps of flowers and beautiful things. So I'm sure you will find things that Joanna's drawn. There's lots of little snails hidden about, but there is no actual treasure hunt element. And number 37, believe it or not, we are at the end, is the publication dates. So the US edition is publishing on the 23rd of October, and the UK edition is publishing on the 25th. So there is only an extra 2 days to wait, which I know feels like torture, but if you think that the UK edition is better for you, then you don't have to wait too much longer for that. So hopefully that won't come into too much of a consideration when you're trying to decide which book to get. So yeah, basically in summary, the US edition it has thicker paper, which is a bit more cream coloured. The images are a bit bigger, and the binding is glue bound. So if you have any issues with vision, fine motor control, that kind of thing, or you want to remove your pages from the book, then I would definitely get the US edition. If you really want to keep your pages in the book and you've had issues with binding before and you're not fussed about the image size, which it doesn't make a big difference, like it is only a centimetre over nearly 25, then I would get the UK copy. The paper is a beautiful colour in both, but it is really quite nice in that one. And you also need to factor in whether you want them to match your previous books and where those are from. So yeah, I might not have helped in terms of giving you a completely definitive answer as to which one is best, but I would love to know in the comments which one you're going to go for and why. What I do always recommend is, if you have the budget for it and the inclination, I would go for both. I love having both. Obviously that's easy for me to say when I've been sent 2 copies, but normally I do purchase them myself, and I have done that for a lot of the previous books. I've got the UK and the US edition myself, and I really like having both for the different reasons. I've just remembered also that obviously the UK edition's got the lovely removable dust jacket, which may be a clincher either way. You might love it, you might hate it, so that might help sway your decision. But yeah, please do let me know in the comments which one you're going to get, or whether you're going to get both, and what your reasons are for that. If there's anything that I've missed, do let me know. I love to know if I've missed something out, and I will add it on. And also let me know what you think, and please do give this video a thumbs up and do subscribe to my channel. Links to the review, the flick-throughs and the written post of this, including heaps and heaps of photos, are in the description box. And thank you so much for staying with me if you have. I will be back soon. So yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that's it. Thanks very much. Bye bye.